Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Kettle Nights podcast. I have another guest with me. His name is Joey Alvarado, right?
That's pretty good pronunciation.
I try my best, my man. I love Spanish. I love that language. But maybe some of you know him under the moniker of Kettle-Jitsu. And what I think is fascinating is I started following Joey, I think back in 2018 when I got started with kettlebells and I was dabbling around with it. And then I found his stuff, which is obviously, if you listen to Kettle-Jitsu, you probably realize as well that it's connected to Jiu Jitsu. And I like the way he uses the kettlebell. And then he commented on a video. I saw his name and I said, like, hey, you know what? We got to have a conversation. So, Joey, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Awesome.
Excited to be out here.
Awesome. So, Joey, we always do the same thing. I want to know everything about your story, about the kettlebell story, the jiu-jitsu story, how it all got started. Give it a whirl.
You want to know, like, why I got into martial arts and stuff?
Whatever it is, the kettlebell story, everything you got.
Oh, my God. So, like, I'm an Army brat, so my father was in the military, and I grew up on like military bases mostly. You know, like in Germany. I lived in Germany. I lived in Stuttgart. I lived in Würzburg. I went to college in Munich. They used to have a University of Maryland over there. But anyway, as a kid, we were stationed in South Carolina, and we were living on base over there. On a base, it's mostly going to be Latinos and blacks. I used to get my ass kicked by black people all the fucking time. I don't know why. They used to pick on me. And then finally, my parents were like, okay, that's it. You got to learn how to fight. We're sick of you coming home crying all the time. Mm-hmm. So that started my martial arts journey. And then I did that my whole life. And then it was back in like the early 90s when I was bouncing. And some guy took me to the ground. And I realized with all these black belts I have, I couldn't even fight, which led me to discover jiu-jitsu. So that started me on my jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai journey right there. And I'm just summarizing it. Otherwise, we'd be on here forever because it's a long story.
Keep going.
So anyway, what brought me to LA was I was reunited with my biological father after 26 years. You know, I was raised by my stepfather. I was in the military. I was raised to believe he was my real dad. And so, like, I always felt like something was missing in my life, man. And then when I was reconnected with my dad, my aunt was like, hey, your dad was a freaking famous professional boxer. And I was like, well,
wow.
I was like, okay, so she's like, and that's why you're good at fighting. And I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
So that's what brought me to LA. That's what brought me to LA. And then I started my whole journey out here, got established, got back into jiu-jitsu and transitioned into MMA. I fought professionally for 7 years, and back then it was the early days of MMA when it was still illegal in California. So we would have to fight in Tijuana, or we used to have to fight
in Mexico, right?
In Mexico, yeah.
Wow.
Or we'd have to fight on the Indian reservations over here, because in California, you know, we have these Indian reservations, and on these Indian reservations, they have their own rules over there.
Their own laws, right? Yeah.
They have their own laws. So that we used to fight over there. That was like King of the Cage. And then I was lucky enough. I wasn't a great fighter. You know, I'm not going to say here, like my record was kind of like 50-50, but I got a lot of experience. And when you're fighting in the game, man, sometimes opportunities present themselves. And I got a call in like a 2 weeks notice to fight for the Cage of Fire Lightweight Championship of Mexico, which was like a new big promotion that had came out. And I took the fight on 2 weeks notice and I won a unanimous decision, got me a little belt. And then one of my students was like, hey man, this is a good time to open a gym. And I was like, yeah, and I was like, that was really my end goal. You know, I fought not because I thought I was going to be like a huge champion or anything, but I wanted to get that experience, you know, because I was like, you know what, I'm going to have to, I want to open a gym. I want to share this knowledge that I've been gaining. So we opened a gym. And then, you know, then I was like, man, I got to teach all these classes and I didn't want to just only teach MMA. So I wanted to teach some fitness stuff too. Cause I was like, people just want to come work out too. Maybe they don't want to do MMA. And I had my own little workouts and stuff like that. And then I was like, wow. I was like, you know what? And this is why I like brutally honest, man. I had this student, Letty. She was one of my best students. And she just turned to me one day and she was like, "Hey, can we do something different? We did this one last week. We've been doing this one a lot. Can we do something different?" I was like, "Oh shit, I gotta step up my game."
Ooh.
So I started research.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Love
started
that.
researching different things, different modalities,
Mm, mm.
and one of my business partner, Bill, he was like, "Hey, why don't we get a kettlebell instructor?"
Wow.
And I was like, "You know what? That's a great idea." I was like, "I've heard a lot of really good things about kettlebells, but I was like, I have no idea what to do with them."
And
And
can
you
you
know
give
what?
us a timeline, Joey? That was
Oh my God.
nine before the 2000s, like 1990 something, or
No,
after the
no, no, no,
2000s,
no,
right?
no, no, no. It was after 2000. So I've been at Legacy for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I had my other gym for like almost like another 8 years or so.
Wow. So it's 2003, four, maybe something around.
Around that time,
Wow. This
yeah,
is the OG days. Yeah.
estimate. And don't take me, for sure,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
not know. I suck at like stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just block it out. I knew it happened way back in the day. Just put it that way. Okay, where was I? Oh, so he goes. Let's get this. I'll find a kettlebell instructor.
Yeah. The kettlebell coach.
But
Yeah.
but one point I wanted to make was a lot of people would see somebody doing a kettlebell and they'll just try to do it. But I was like, I'm not sure what to do with that. I was smart enough to know I needed an instructor. You know what I mean? Which more people really, really, really need to do. And people hit me up and he goes, "Hey, I just did your workout." I was like, "What workout?" "The workout you did on Instagram." I was like, "That's a 1-minute video. What did you do?"
I love
Like,
this.
you know what I mean? So
It's
like
a
people,
1-minute video. What kind of workout?
like, what workout did you do? Did you just do that whole thing for like 30 minutes straight or what? You didn't warm up or what?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was smart enough to know, like, I was like, I've heard about it, but I don't know what to do. I knew it had technique and I needed somebody to teach. And a lot of people need to humble themselves and realize that it's really good to start off with an instructor to have somebody show you. So anyway, we got at that time the biggest kettlebell organization was RKC. So that's how far back it was. When Strong First didn't exist. And my business partner research, he got a certified instructor and he came to the gym, he brought his kettlebells and he started doing a class once a week at my gym. And my gym was called SoCal MMA back then. And we were like, wow, this is pretty cool. I was like, there's something different. We learned to swing. We learned goblet squat. I don't know why that goblet thing kind of just, I don't like that name for some reason. But we learned the Turkish get up. I mean, and it was, and to be honest, it was really monotonous. And my back hurt after every class. And I know, I mean, he's a great guy. I love him. And he showed me some really solid fundamentals, and people they can only show you what they've learned. You know what I mean? So it was really super basic. I felt like I was getting a workout from like here down. And I was like, how come we don't incorporate more upper body? And I was like, why does my back freaking hurt? But they have this mentality. You're a guy, you have to swing with, I don't even know how much they would say. He's like, you're an MMA
Back
fighter,
in the day, these heavy weights, right?
Yeah. They're like, you gotta swing with, you're a guy, you should be swinging with this. And I was like, but the fucking shit hurts my back, man. I was like, and then I realized after a while, I was like, you know what? We don't warm up enough. Our warm-ups were like, hey, grab a 16 kilogram kettlebell and do some halos or something, And I was just like, man, this isn't really jiving with me. People stopped showing up to the class because it just became boring. Just because you become certified does not mean that you know how to teach a class. That comes from experience and stuff like that.
Oh, I love this. I think that's an important distinction that people have to understand, right? It's like, hey, absolutely. I get certified, so give me a bunch of people and I'll do what I have to do. But at the end of the day, working with people in a group setting sometimes requires insights and knowledge that you don't learn in a cert on the weekend, right?
You're really smart to find out that distinction right there. There's a big difference. People get certified like, oh, I'm going to teach, and then they realize they don't know how to teach. I was like, how do you teach 20 people in a class? How do you give them a good kettlebell workout? I guarantee you the majority
and different levels, right? Sometimes you have different levels, different age groups. Somebody's able to move their hips perfectly. Somebody's not able to move their hips. Somebody has pain. Man, yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I love
really
this, man.
important. It's really important, man. So then after a while, I was like, you know what, man? Oh, you know what happened was he couldn't make it one day, so he brought in a female friend of hers, and I forgot her name, and I think her name was Cindy, and she did a class, and she introduced the concept, and I was like, that's it right there. And I have to give her a lot of credit for that, because she's pretty smart for figuring it out herself. She was like, you know what? A lot of people, she's like, came in, she's like, you know, a lot of people do circuits with a kettlebell, barbell, medicine ball, plyo box. She was like, I like to create circuits just with the kettlebell alone. And I was like, exactly. I was like, boom. I was like, exactly. Hello.
That's what it is, man.
And then, and she kind of put it together like that. And we did some different stuff. And I was like, man, that's a great idea, dude. I was like, why don't more people do that? So then I was like, I need more kettlebell knowledge. I was like, I'm not getting, and you know what? He was really like, you should get your RKC, you should get certified, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, well, how much is it? It's $2,000. Like, Jesus Christ, $2,000.
Back in the days, like, man. Yeah. That's a lot of money, man.
That's a lot of money, period, man. I'm not
definitely
rich.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, you know, like, let me look into it, man. And I started pulling up all this RKC stuff, and I was like, it's not really my cup of tea. I saw how they had this real weird, like, kind of like militant thing going on.
The tough guy thing. Like, the tough guy thing, right?
I mean, with Pavel, you know, he has that I'm Russian Spetsnaz, you know, comrade, like, you want to be strong, like, you know. I was like, man, this stuff is like a little cheesy, running around calling each other comrade. And but hey, man, to each their own, because people do like that military stuff. But coming from a real military background, I was just like, it didn't really jive with me. And I noticed that the whole certification revolved around the snatch. And I remember my instructor would be always, oh yeah, if you get your snatch up, your jiu-jitsu is going to go through the roof and all this stuff like that. And I'm very in touch with my body. And I knew, I was like, this is a cool exercise, but it's not what this guy is telling me. He doesn't really understand jiu-jitsu and martial arts, because the snatch does not necessarily translate to having real functional strength, like for jiu-jitsu. And I think it's really overly touted in the kettlebell industry.
Wow.
But anyway, so
and if I may, Joey, because that's such a good place to ask a question. What would be an adequate exercise pertaining to kettlebells that transfers well into jiu-jitsu?
The main thing is, you got to understand, jiu-jitsu involves your whole body, right? So what I've learned over the years is, you know, people like, oh, to get strong, you have to use a lot of weight. You have to use a lot. You do this. You don't have to use a lot of weight. You just have to do. You can use moderate weight, and you can do a lot of compound exercises. That's the key to doing full body moves. Like something that, like, one of my favorite things to do is just a clean and press, man. And you could do 10 different variations of the clean and press with kettlebells. You can do a single kettlebell flow with one hand. You can do two hands. You can do double kettlebell. You can do a combat clean. You know what I mean? And you can work it from all different angles. And that's a full body movement where you're working all your muscles. You're pulling, you're squatting, you're using your posterior chain and everything like that. So the key is to, like, I never do muscle isolation. We always work on the entire body.
Yep.
And so I wouldn't narrow it down to just one exercise. I narrow it down to specific movements. So all of my workouts have squatting, lunging, pushing, pulling, and some rotational stuff. And hinging. And hinging.
Basic human movements, right?
If you're addressing all those areas and using them as compound movements as well, you're good to go. You're covering all your grounds. You know what I mean? You can get super specific with certain movements and stuff like that. And that's great too. But my job is to teach group classes. You know, if we're running around the ground doing all kinds of stuff on the ground, like bumping into each other and stuff like that, it just doesn't work. So I've narrowed it down to, it's like almost like purest form. A lot of people think it's complicated. It's really, really very simple the way I construct these workouts.
And we see that when if somebody, if somebody's listening or watching, and you got to check out Joey's videos. What I love about your workout, and that's coming from a person who has a little bit of experience working with people, is what I see you do is I see there is a thought process in the workout. I see there's movements that everybody can do. I see it's not overly complicated. It's not over the top stuff, but it's valuable. And that always when I see this now with my eye that I have now, being in the game a little longer now I can see this and I appreciate it for what it is because there's experience. This is is what works with people. This is not the Instagram jive stuff that you put up to get a lot of views and clicks. This is what works IRL, right? In real life.
In real life, for sure, man. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that, you know, and I started off like, well, let me go back to the story. So
keep going.
Because it's going to tie into what we're saying now. Where do we leave off with my story?
With the snatch. So, you said the snatch is not
the snatch and then RKC. So I was like, no, I'm not going to get certified by this RKC. It's not really my thing. I was like, there has to be more. How come nobody is doing anything different? And I realized there was this like, it was almost like frowned upon to do anything different. You know what I mean? Because like, and I was like, that's kind of weird. And then and that's why like I was really surprised about Steve, because I was searching for people and I saw Steve, very good shape. I was like, this guy's a jiu-jitsu guy, dope. And I was like, and he does some different things with the kettlebell. And I was like, you know what? He actually works out. I see him working out with the kettlebell. I see him working out. He's passionate about fitness. I didn't see any passion with Pavel. That guy, he's not passionate about fitness, in my opinion. I think he's a businessman. I think he's a businessman. I think they created like this whole like mythological thing with Pavel as a business, because he didn't do it himself. He had people helping him in the RKC, and then later on he moved on. But I identify with Steve, and I identify with Steve Cotter.
So Steve Maxwell and Steve Cotter, right? Both Steves.
The two Steves, man. They're OGs, man. And Steve back then was more. He was like, his early videos, he was experimenting with stuff. He'd get the towel and he'd throw it around and walk around like and do the duck walk. And I was like, man, he's doing something different. See, people do different things. But then he kind of transitioned more into sport. And then both of those Steves like traveled around a lot. And so I'm going to be brutally honest. I was living in my gym and I was puffing on a little bit of that funny stuff. And then I was like, man, I bet you can do some jiu-jitsu movements with the kettlebell, because you could just hold it like right here, which in jiu-jitsu, if you're fighting off your back, you need to keep your hands tight, because the more you dangle your arms around, the more you're going to get arm barred and stuff like that, right? So I was like, I could hold a kettlebell like this. And then I just grabbed the kettlebell, opened my door, and I was already on my mat right there, you know? And then I started doing some hip escapes. I started doing some rocking chairs. And I was like, well, this is freaking dope, man. I was like, I kind of feel like I'm working out a little bit I feel like I'm doing jujitsu and shit. And then I was like, there's got to be some ways you can throw punches with these kettlebells. And so I started developing punching and different styles of figure eights to mimic hooking punches. And I was like, man, you know, I can chain all these movements together seamlessly. I can go from a hip escape to a deck squat to a figure eight punch, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, like after that, my students became my guinea pigs.
That's experiment. That's experiment, my friends.
Like
I'm the scientist.
It became my lab, you know.
Love it, man.
And you know what happened?
Same here.
I started, and then I started calling it like Kettle-Jitsu, and my students started asking for it. They're like, hey, can we do some more of that Kettle-Jitsu stuff? Because they're just like, whoa, this stuff is dope, you know. And I was like, cool, man. I was like, they're digging it. Like I'm on to something, right? So I started doing incorporating more than kettlebells, more different variety of different workouts and stuff like that, and they were enjoying it. And I wanted to connect with more people in the industry that were like me. I was trying to find an organization that I had something in common with, you know, that I liked. And I came across a website called My Mad Methods.
My Mad Methods.
My Mad Methods. It was a website called. It's the first unconventional website for unconventional fitness ever.
Wow.
So it was at that time it was owned by Mark DeGrasse, and
That name rings some bells. Yeah.
and
DeGrasse.
Marcus Martinez.
Marcus Martinez. Wait, from the
Extreme
Kettlebell Kings?
Get water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Kettlebell Kings, right? Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's still with them or not. I'm not sure if he's still with them or not, if he's by himself now.
Wow.
But,
yeah. I think
yeah,
Kettlebell Living Fit is what he does right now. I think that's what I saw. Yeah. That's him.
So it was them two. And they were selling kettlebells, and they had their own little workout videos on YouTube. And I was like, okay, now these guys are starting to think outside of the box. They weren't doing what I was doing, but you know, they're doing different things. They're like at least using sit-ups with it, and they were tossing them back and forth to one another. And like I said, they weren't doing what I was doing. I was like, but at least I was like, these guys seem like they're more open-minded. Because when I would post my videos, man, the RKC people would just rip me to shreds. Oh, you're not supposed to do that. Oh, it's not approved by Pavel. Pavel would never approve that. Oh, no.
They will rip me to shreds. I love this.
You're going to hurt people.
You know, I get, you know, the funny thing is when I got started, just to interject real quick, it was the same thing. You're not supposed to lift your heel off the floor. You're not supposed to blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, especially when you combine or when you see these polar opposites, which is hardstyle and the kettlebell sport, right? Sure. Which are moving in completely different ways and even using completely different bells, which I have now found out after talking to John McCain, which was completely intentional. They wanted to create something unique, which they have succeeded, right? So, and it's the same experience that I had. And I think, and this also might be a little question to you. I think, yes, there are certain rules and laws of physics and of human body movements, and even more factors that I don't want to mention now, but because it gets too deep. But there are certain rules that we all have to play by, but there's also room for experimenting. And they both go a little bit hand in hand, because what is your take? Keep your thought, what you wanted to share, because that's just another question that I have. Do you think we're supposed to experiment all outside the box, and then you see sometimes stuff where I'm like, whoa, where are you coming from? Or do you think we have to, you know, find some, you know, we have some laws that we have to follow? What's your take?
I think I've never done sport, but if you're going to learn kettlebell, I think you have to start off with learning basics to build off.
Yeah.
So no matter what, and it doesn't matter what modality you're doing, like in jiu-jitsu, I'm not going to go off and start teaching really advanced techniques. I have to teach these people those foundational movements that are going to build into those more complicated movements. So if you don't have, and you know what, like downstairs, I have a person that lives in my apartment. He's this tall guy, and he always has these basketballs. I was like, hey, are you a basketball coach? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I teach high school basketball. That's cool, man. I was like, you must be really slick, because basketball players, I respect them a lot. They're amazing athletes, and they're slick. You know, they make you think you're doing this and then you're going to shoot over. You know what I mean? And then he looked at me, he goes, you know what, man? It's all about fundamentals. And I was like, oh my God, man. I was like,
always the same story.
I was like, so it applies, you know what I mean? It applies everywhere.
Everywhere.
You know? So like, I would assume if somebody came in to a sport person who was like, hey, I've never done kettlebells before, like, I would like to learn sport kettlebell. I'm sure he's not going to just freaking slap on a couple 22 kilograms to the guy and make him start doing jerks, right?
Imagine this.
I hope not.
Pick them up and let's go.
I think there are some people back in the day who would probably do that, though. You know,
yeah. You want to try, you have to lift them. You have to stay with them for an hour at least, my friend. Yeah. Most definitely.
So it's all about the fundamentals, man.
It's the fundamentals.
For sure.
Love this.
Okay. So back to Marcus and all those cats. So
yes.
then I went to go buy some kettlebells, and they had a gym too. What was their gym called? It was My Mad Methods. Man, I forgot it. But they also started a magazine, by the way. So I went to their gym, and I met Mark DeGrasse first.
Mm-hmm.
I briefly met Marcus, and I was like, hey man, I wanted to buy some kettlebells, and I was getting the kettlebells. I was like, hey dude, I was like, you know what, I've been developing my own thing called Kettle-Jitsu, and I was like, would you like to see some moves? You know, I'd like to show them to you. I wanted to get somebody, because I felt like he had already been doing kettlebells longer than me, both Marcus and Mark. And I wanted some kind of like a verification, like, hey, what do you, I wanted feedback. I wanted
proper feedback, right, from somebody who knows the craft, right? Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, sure. So we went out, he had his little mat, and I started doing a kettlebell flow, and his eyes just freaking opened up, and he was like, hey man, I was like, is it okay if I record this? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then he started recording, and then I was flowing, and he put the camera down. He's like, man, we have to do a DVD. He's like, this makes sense. He's like, this is the evolution of fucking kettlebell training. He's like, it makes sense. And I was like, a DVD? I was like, wow. I was like, I mean, that was back then, you know, DVDs.
Yeah, it was. It is. Kids nowadays don't know what this is, my man.
Yeah, but that's, I'm like, I mean, I would never know how to do a DVD.
Yeah. It was different back then. Yeah,
so I was like, you know how to do a DVD? I was like, cool. So then I came up with the name Combat Kettlebell Systems. And he was like, you know what, man, like, people want to see the fancy shit. You got to do like the hard stuff, because people have already saw the basic stuff. So come on. So I came up with all the workouts on the DVD, and we released it, Combat Kettlebell System. It's sold in 30 countries worldwide. Wow. And then we got hit up with a copyright infringement lawsuit. So we had to change the name and all kinds of shit. It was just fucking, it was a nightmare. And it just like killed the sales, because once we got hit up by the copyright infringement, I could not post anything related to that name on Facebook or they took everything down. They took everything down, and it really hurt, because we were up to like, I don't know, like we were just gaining momentum, man. You know, man,
you should have stuck with Kettle-Jitsu, man.
Yeah. So that and that's what we went back with. We already taught it Kettle-Jitsu. I don't know why I named it what I did, but I started doing certifications, and I started doing certs all over the place and stuff like that. And I remember when my DVD came out, I hit up Steve Cotter. We were friends on Facebook, and I was like, hey man, you know, I'd like to send you a DVD and tell me what you think about it. He goes, Joey, I've been watching your stuff, and he goes, you're onto something. And he goes, you're onto something, man. Yeah. He's like, you're onto something. He's like, keep doing what you're doing. He goes, and don't listen to anybody else. So man, Steve is such a fucking cool guy, man. He's such a nice guy, such a genuine guy, and he's humble, man. And that is that gave me so much, you know, I can't think of the fucking word, man, but like, it really made me feel good. And I was like, I'm glad he understands what I'm doing, because back then I was still like, I was battling with these RKC peeps, man.
I was battling with them.
I was battling with these cats, man. They're trolling me like crazy, man.
You know what comes to mind is this great video from Elliot Holtz. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's an old school video. I think it was 2011 or 12 or something. I remember
Elliot. Yeah, he was a for a while.
And he said, kettlebells build muscle. That was the video. And then
I remember that.
And I like the way and I love his form. I love how he does it. Then he shows off some stuff, and the way he talks, right? And then he said, yeah, you know, and then he demonstrates the snatch, puts the kettlebell down, and then that's how you do it. Unless I get taken down by you RKC Nazis. It was so.
But see, like somebody like Elliot, like he didn't even realize. He's like, can you build? And I don't think he said that you can build muscle with kettlebells, and it's just because
he said it.
He's basing it all around the snatch.
Yep.
I mean, so it's just that's just.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny, Joey? When you look at the snatch, actually, the way it is taught in the giveaway world, or you know what's funny? I love the description how Sean Mosen says. Sean Mosen says, "Hey man, you either do high tension or you do high volume." So and that it's your movement pattern, right? So if you do a high volume snatch, where the idea is to get as many reps as possible in, to get your heart rate up, to get some strength endurance going, then the snatch is actually a more of a strength endurance type of exercise, right?
Mhm.
And especially, of course, you can always use a very heavy kettlebell. You can do this with almost everything,
Sure.
but I wouldn't consider the snatch a classic muscle builder. Of
No,
course, it
no,
builds
no.
muscle, it does, but it's not in a way where I would, for
Exactly.
example, say a strict press or a heavy row or a heavy deadlift or a heavy squat, right, with a heavy bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the classic sense, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So like what I always tell people is like, I mean, you can use a kettlebell the same way you use a barbell or a dumbbell.
Yeah, most definitely.
Like so if you really that was your goal to build kettlebell specific or build muscle specifically with kettlebells, then you would have to use it in that manner. It's very
Exactly.
simple. Like,
Exactly.
but typically people who use kettlebells are not looking to get real huge or anything like that. They're looking. Most people, I would say, that use kettlebells are looking for more overall functional strength. And if they want to build certain muscles, then they'll do muscle isolation exercises like benches and stuff like that,
Hmm.
barbell squats, benches, or whatever like that. So
Hmm. Hmm.
my goal is just overall uh, functional strength, stuff
Hmm.
that I can use for everyday life and jujitsu as well. And stuff
Hmm.
that people can do, everybody can do, not just the good athletes and stuff like that.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It resonated with you with this when they gave you feedback, right? So it all took
oh yeah.
off.
So Steve
Yeah.
gave me feedback, and then came out with the DVD. I was doing certifications and stuff like that, and then I came out with a body weight training DVD called Shadow Jitsu. And then Mark started getting into different things, like we didn't really agree with everything all the time after a while, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like he
Mm-hmm.
I did my thing, and then he did a DVD with John Wolf. I don't know if you've done
Ah,
Wolf.
the on
On
it,
it.
on
On
it.
it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
he did a DVD with John Wolf, and John Wolf, when my DVD came out, a couple of his students hit me up. They're like, "Hey, we got your DVD. It was awesome. We gave it to your instructor." I went up there and I trained with John Wolf. He was a cool guy and everything. He came back down and he did my certification.
Awesome.
Him and his wife at the time.
Wow.
And he came out his DVD, he was a TACFit guy at the time. He was the American director of TACFit. So he was more of a TACFit guy, but he had a kettlebell background as well. So then when he did his DVD, it was like kind of a cross between almost like TACFit and Kettle-Jitsu, really. If you
Mm,
look back, I forgot what it was
mm,
called. Anyway, so Mark started doing DVDs with different people. And I was like, hey, I want to do another DVD. And he's like, okay, well, we're going to do this and do that. And I was like, listen, man, I was like, I'm not doing all that fancy stuff anymore, because I was like, my students can't even do that.
ah,
That's not how I was like, back in the day, it was cool because it was new and I didn't know
mm,
any better. But now that I've been teaching it with
mm,
group classes all the time, I realized that people can't do all this fucking complicated shit.
mm,
I was like, they need to come in. Only have 1 hour to work out. I can't
mm,
spend 20 minutes trying to teach
mm.
them this complicated thing. So I had to simplify it and everything. He was like, oh, well, people don't want to see that. Blah, blah,
Uh,
blah,
uh,
blah. He's like, so I was like, we started kind of bumping heads. And then he hits me up one day and then he goes, hey, man, my Mad Methods just got bought out by Onnit. And I was like,
ah,
oh, wow. He's like, so what that means is that, they bought all your DVDs and so under this production company. I'm going to go down there. I'm going to start the Onnit Fitness Academy. And he goes, and then I'm going to bring you down as the kettlebell expert. I was like, okay. He's like, and just think of it, like he was like, it's owned by Joe Rogan and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, okay, well, that sounds cool.
mm, mm,
And as I told you that Marcus and Mark were business partners, right?
mm-hmm.
They split up because there was a big falling out between them. And after that happened, my business partner, Mark, he was like, I don't even want you talking to Marcus, blah, 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 blah. I was like,
Wow.
okay, cool.
Mm,
Even though I respected Marcus because I thought he was a good trainer and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, this is my business partner, so I don't want to cause any drama.
Mm-hmm.
And so then so instead of going with me as a kettlebell instructor, he did a 180 and went with Marcus. which I thought was the weirdest thing. And I was like, I thought you guys were not talking and
Okay.
stuff like that. So he went with Marcus. They started the On It Academy, and they started doing kettlebell certifications with On It back then. And things switched around. I don't know what happened over there. And basically what happened is they blew up my concept of kettlebell flows. And then they got the primal soldier guy in there, and then everybody thinks kettlebell flows and stuff came from On It. You know, when in actuality, I was really one who started that whole.
And I have to, and let me just jump in real quick. I saw you way before these guys, and when I watched your stuff again, I realized, I was like, yeah, that's like style number 3, the flow, the idea of combining movements, but movements that make sense and not just look good. And I love I wanted to ask the question, and you answered it already. When you said that your business partner back then, Mark, came up and said, show me the fancy stuff. And then, of course, you experimenting, trying new stuff out. And then you try it in real life, and you realize, hey, man, this doesn't work with people. It maybe works with high-level athletes who are used to kettlebells or whatever. Sure. But I love what you said. I can't just have 1 hour of a workout and take 20 minutes away of instructing people. This is people want to come, train, and don't think too hard. And they want to get it moving. And I love how you answer that question, because I want to pose you a question to say, hey, that fancy stuff, did you keep it? And did you then incorporate it in your daily stuff? But yeah, you just answered it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, right?
No, it's just not practical.
It's not practical. It's not practical.
If you want to, and everything for me with my workouts revolves around real practicality and real functionality. Yeah. You know, it's my job to teach group classes. I've been teaching group classes literally 6 days a week for like 15 years now. And I can honestly say, I don't know another kettlebell instructor who's done it. Like Steve Maxwell and Steve Cotter, they were traveling all over, teach here, boom. I think that's pretty easy. You just teach for a couple of days straight, and then you just move on.
It's way different.
Try teaching the same people over and over and over and over. And I guarantee you, I would say like 95% of the kettlebell instructors there could not do that. So my goals are totally different than anybody else's. I love teaching group classes, and I love working out with my group classes. You know, and now we have gotten into what I say are Instagram workouts. You know, and now like what's funny is I really started this whole hybrid revolution with kettlebell flows and stuff like that. And back in the day, when it was RKC, and even later on, the Strong First people used to heckle me as well. But
it continued, right? They didn't let off. They didn't let off.
You think I'm playing, man?
No. I love. I see it 100%. I see it because I experienced it as well. It's so funny that it changed, but they still heckle you.
yeah. Back then they did, and they thought I was like the crazy one back then, and now I feel like I'm more on the conservative side of kettlebell flows. I love what I mean? Isn't that crazy? Isn't it crazy how things have shifted? Because now it's so inauthentic, man. And I think
I feel you, man.
I don't want to be like a dick. That kettlebell, I've always said, a kettlebell is a blank canvas. You can do whatever you want with it. It doesn't mean that it's practical and functional. And I think people are not even using it as a workout tool. They're doing it they're using it more for how to get followers and how to get likes and stuff like that. Man, that's what kettlebell training has turned into. And now you got these guys that it's obvious that these guys are fucking bodybuilders. I was like, motherfucker, you don't fucking work out with a kettlebell. You're a bodybuilder, and you're over here doing some stupid ass kettlebell flow, and you're just doing it for likes. You don't work out. Why don't you show us what you really do for your body, the way you look like that? Because you obviously don't do these kettlebell exercises for your body. You know what I mean? So to me, that's just being inauthentic. And now, right now, like the whole trend right now is juggling the kettlebells,
Mm-hmm.
flipping it around your back, flipping it here, flipping it
Mm-hmm.
over your head. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I was like, man, that's not the most practical thing to do for me. You know, but if you want to get a couple of your buddies together, hey, let's work on a kettlebell flow for this video. That's one thing, man. But what are you doing? You're doing choreography for kettlebells, basically.
That's what it is, man. That, man, you're hitting the nail on the head. And you know, I've had the pleasure of having a conversation, for example, with my brother Colin Daring, who's a beast in I call it freestyle juggling. It's not the juggling in a sense that the Russians do it with these, you know, with these given sets of parts of a choreography. It's completely freestyle. And while I told him, man, you're as well, you're onto something. It's special what you do. And at the same time, with the experience that I have, when people ask me and they say, hey, I see all this juggling stuff, I tell them, listen, it's like what you mentioned, and even Colin mentions this. It's all about the fundamentals, and then you can jive with it however you want to.
Yeah.
But
definitely, you have to learn fundamentals before you do that stuff.
But I think we make a mistake if we think that juggling the kettlebell gives you more bang for your buck or a bigger return on investment than a proper swing, a proper get up, or a proper press.
A real trainer, if somebody came to a trainer and said, hey, I want to get fit, somebody who really truly understands how to exercise and how to get strong, how to lose weight and everything, would never ever incorporate any type of juggling. That's just that. I don't care. You tell me if you're blue in the face, but that's just, you know, you can't tell me. You know, I was talking to one guy. I don't want to give his name. He's a very, very nice guy, and he's getting very popular right now. And I guess I said something about juggling in my stories, and then he responded to me. He's being very nice, by the way. He was like, hey man, he goes, I juggle and I'm like really strong and fit. And I was like, yeah. I was like, and I see that. I said, like, you're pretty jacked and everything. I was like, but you didn't get that from juggling.
Mm-hmm. We have,
and I was like,
it is what it is.
I was like, I was like, you didn't get that from juggling. You know, how many bodybuilders do you see juggling dumbbells around?
Imagine.
spinning
Michael Hearn flipping the bench press like that. That's why I look like this, my man.
You know, but man, you're getting people on Instagram now doing crazy stuff with barbells now because of what's left. People are doing
what's left.
Kettlebell.
Did you see this one guy who was he was on a ladder? Somehow a cross trainer, the machine was hanging in the air. He's kind of like, he's kind of like doing this on the machine while curling. It's crazy. I forgot the name. It's ultimate. I think it's the epitome of doing it for clicks and views. And
exactly.
the reason this resonates so much with me, Joey, is because it is the truth. It is. When I come up, sometimes I'm like, when people ask me stuff, then I'm like, listen, I'll be explaining the swing in every other video for the rest of my life because it's a fundamental exercise. And I know that maybe I get a subscriber burnout because some people are like, man, you show us the swing for the 10,000th time
Sure.
on YouTube or whatever have you. Then I'm like, listen, I do this for people who are new, who are coming in, and the fundamentals will always beat everything. It's not, if you are, I juggle. I do some ultimate basic juggle moves, but it's from my full, if I take all of my full workouts that I do in the week, it's 2 minutes of these full workouts, which lasts 30 to 40 minutes per workout. 2 minutes I dedicate to juggling because it's fun. And I love it. But
yeah, for sure. Agree. That's exactly right. Like, you know, you have to distinguish what is going to get you in shape and what is fun. And like I said, you could do whatever you want, man. I was like, the fun part is the juggling part. Don't think that that's going to get you in shape. And the thing with me is I have people that sign up to train just kettlebell with me. Yeah. And maybe they can only train 3 times a week.
Yeah.
So why would I want to show them how to juggle a kettlebell
Why
if
waste
they already
time,
have?
right?
I have to give them the workout that they need, that they want. Like I have one student, Jess. She's been with me for 7 years now. I've coached her through like 2 pregnancies and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And she's a mom and she has kids and stuff like that. Am I going to come
Mm-hmm.
here and spend a whole class teaching her how to juggle?
Mm-hmm.
No, she needs to get her workout in, and then she knows go get her daughter ready for school and blah 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 blah. You know what
Because
I mean?
people
So I
have a
work,
life. Because people have
yeah.
a life,
And
man.
and I
And
realized that about juggling too, because like when I was on my journey really trying to research kettlebells and discover kettlebells, I came across Jeff Martone. Have you ever heard of
yeah,
him?
yeah, most definitely. Yeah, OG and art
Dude, like he
also.
was like OG of fucking juggling, man. Like
Mm.
I was like, oh shit. I was like, look at this guy. He's flipping it around and
Mm.
flipping it and tapping it and doing all kinds
Mm.
of stuff. I was like, hey, that's kind of like boxing a little bit. And I started messing around with it, and I was like, you know what, man? It takes a long time to learn how to juggle it like that. And am I going to teach this to students on a mat, a jiu-jitsu mat, a tatami, flipping kettlebells, dropping it all over the mat, putting holes in my mat and stuff like that. So I was like, okay. So right away I realized I was like, okay, I got to eliminate. I'm not even going to mess with this juggling stuff. I'm going to leave it at. And even he eventually went into like CrossFit kettlebell, and
Mm.
you don't
Mm.
really see him juggling and everything. But
Mm.
yeah, that's what the internet now is now. It's just turned into all these people are just basically like actors now. They just
Mm.
they create this persona, and they put all of these workouts that nobody in their right mind is going to freaking do, but they know it's going to get them likes and stuff like that.
And
So what's going to happen? So like we're seeing trends in kettlebell
yeah,
training now.
yeah.
We're seeing trends. So eventually people are going to realize all that juggling shit is BS, and then hopefully they get back to the nitty gritty.
And it's maybe not even BS. It's just, if I may just interject, it's
Mhm.
just a completely advanced form that is fun.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
and
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
that's where
It's
right,
another
right.
style of kettlebell training altogether. So you
Yeah,
have sport
yeah,
kettlebell training, you
yeah,
have
yeah,
the hard style, you
yeah,
have what
yeah.
I don't even know what my style would be called, what kettlebell flow or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, the
And
flow, and I love this description. It's just the combination of movements, which I have a couple of questions about. But I love what you're saying, and sometimes I'm thinking when I have conversations with Angie, I always tell her, I say, listen, you know what I see happening on social, or sometimes even just in a bigger sense in the kettlebell community, is we are preaching to the choir. We are showing each other in that small circle how fancy we can be with kettlebells, while at the
Mhm.
same time the people who need it the most, because it does so much, the kettlebell gives you so many benefits all at once, get completely lost on the sideline. Because I mean, sometimes clients walk in and they say, I mean, I love the kettlebell, but when I see you do this stuff, I mean, this is so intimidating.
Mhm.
And they talk about a snatch, and I'm saying, listen, forget the snatch. We're just learning some proper deadlifting, a proper farmer's walk, a proper press, and hey, you're good to go. You don't need anything else. That's what it
Exactly.
is, right?
Yeah. That's just extra. Yeah, juggling is just extra.
Mm,
That's
love it.
when you have time, and if you have a lot of time on your hands, and then you can mess around with juggling. But like if your goal is just to exercise and get fit, then you're probably most likely going to eliminate it. But the whole reason I started doing kettlebell flows is because nobody wants to work out if it's not fun.
Yeah.
So like if I'm doing just swings and goblet squats all the time, that just gets freaking boring out. I would lose my mind. So that's the way I do it. You want to make it fun for yourself too. And then you have your extra credit, your little icing on the cake for juggling. If whatever you want to do, you can create a crazy complicated kettlebell flow. Because now there's a lot of different, like I'm pretty old school when it comes to like switching hands. Your basic hand to hand switch.
Yeah.
But now they're doing all where they throw it up and they catch it with the other hand, and
Yeah.
and do different ones, and that's cool too. That's
Mm-hmm.
cool. Whatever, like if that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're switching a little bit too much and you're constantly teaching students, it's not that practical.
I love it.
We want to keep it as simple as possible, because like you said, like I said, you're really intuitive to be able to understand that. And you haven't really been training with kettlebells that long. Is like I have people who have been with me for 7-10 years, And then what if somebody comes in? Every now and then I'll get somebody who's never done it before. How do I give everybody in that class who's
Oh,
all different levels a
yeah,
good workout?
yeah,
And now if I
yeah.
incorporate juggling, or if I incorporate
No,
something too crazy or a crazy get up or something like that, then that person's going to be like, you know what, this kettlebell stuff, it's a little too complicated for me. I don't think it's for me.
it,
My job, like I need to keep a job. I need to keep a roof over my head. So I have to make that person like the kettlebell workout. And I have it down to a system. And like people associate me with kettlebell flows. That is just one of my protocols that I've developed over years. So I have a pyramid protocol. I have a circuit protocol as well. So
mm,
I don't just do only kettlebell flows. And
mm,
each protocol is going to give you a different type of workout.
mm,
One's a little bit more anaerobic than the other. Like if you do
mm,
one of my pyramid style workouts, that is going to be like your freaking anaerobic threshold is just,
mm,
it's crazy with that one.
mm,
So the
mm.
flow, so we do all of them and stuff like that, but everybody's like kettlebell flow, kettlebell flow, kettlebell flow right now, juggle, juggle, juggle.
It's yeah. It's just it's I see that trend as well, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think when it comes down, it's what you're saying. It's practicality, and I love what you just mentioned because this happens here as well. We have also group classes. We have one-on-one, but also group classes. And then once in a while, yeah, somebody comes in completely brand new. So while other people are doing the swing, I'm telling them, listen, we're just doing some deadlifts. Forget the swing. Let
Yeah,
them
yeah,
other
yeah.
swing. We're just focusing on a deadlift. And while other people are doing the clean and press, alternating, switching sides every other rep, I tell that person, listen, forget one hand. We just grab it with two hands and then we bring it overhead, bring it back down. That's it. While other
Exactly.
people are doing the goblet squat, forget the kettlebell. You just do body weight squats because you want to get used to it. And I have people who are really, as well, like you have, people who are really good at it now. And still, I wouldn't think about wanting to waste their time with highly complicated exercises who take a lot to explain. If I do it, it's a seminar then. Then it's completely different in the approach. And I'm like, listen, we have a seminar 1.5 hour where we focus on the long cycle, the double jerk, the Turkish squat up or whatever have you, with complicated exercises where we are just here to learn. But if we
Hmm.
want to train, it's a different ball game.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're
Man.
smart. So you got, and that's another thing is you start realizing how much you don't know when you're teaching people on a regular basis. So you really have to step up your game. You have to be able to adapt
Oh,
to
yeah,
to
yeah,
to the to those clients. Like you said,
yeah,
this chick has to just do a body weight squat. You have to be able to just to train everybody, read everybody,
yeah,
watch everybody,
yeah.
and I've been doing it so long, like I'm over here pressing and correcting people at the same time, like
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I love to work out with my students, man. It's fun. It's fun working out with people.
Awesome.
So yeah, so I'm always watching too. And another key thing that I would like to point out is for me, like my journey led me to doing a lot of body weight training as well.
Hmm.
So without, for me, there is no kettlebell training without body weight training.
Oh,
I learned a long time ago that you have to warm up. One of the main reasons kettlebell back in the day, kettlebells had like a bad rep. Oh, they hurt your back. They hurt your back. They hurt your back.
mm,
They hurt your back.
mm,
And
mm,
I was like, no, kettlebells don't hurt your back. Improper warm-ups hurt your back. Lack
mm,
of knowledge, not knowing how to use a
mm,
kettlebell properly hurt your back.
mm,
So
mm.
remember when I told you my first instructor was like, you must swing with
Yeah,
40
yeah.
kilos.
Keep going with the 40
And
kilo.
I, in my classes, I was like, we're not even going to pick up a kettlebell for the first 30 minutes of the workout because we're going to do mobility. We're going to do a lot of like isometric exercises,
Mm-hmm.
low impact exercises to warm
Mm-hmm.
up your core thoroughly,
Mm-hmm.
particularly your lower back, man. The lower back injury is so common from people using too much weight, not working out, and improper form. So I
Mm-hmm.
never force weight on people. I never do, especially if
Yeah.
it's your first day. I'm like, just
Yeah.
grab a light kettlebell. It's about movement. Just
Yeah.
move and
Yeah.
learn the movements.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like we do body weight training. We start off with like about the first 10, 15 minutes is all mobility.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then we start getting into some higher intensity body weight training, like burpee breakdowns and like push up and squat, body weight squat protocols and stuff like
Mm.
that. So we get into the kettlebell training. And we don't go right into the kettlebell flow. Like if the flow has a squat, press, and a swing in it, we work each individual movement over and over to get that workout in your legs, to get your pressing in, get your pulling in and stuff. And then
you combine.
Then I combine it because people
you
see
prep,
that last.
you prep them first. That last bit, and they think, oh, that's how I'm supposed to move. No. It's supposed to build up
until a progression.
It's a progression.
It's a progression.
But you know, it's what you're saying. We see these bits and pieces on social, and everybody's losing their attention span. So we have to make it as quick and shocking and entertainment as possible.
You get caught up in that, man.
You get caught up in that. Especially beginners get caught up in this, and then they think, okay, I have to do a jerk with a snatch backflip with a barbell over my head, right? So exactly. and at the end of the day, it's like, no, man, this is what gets the clicks and the views. But the fundamentals, unfortunately, they don't sound as sexy because it's always, most of the time, you mentioned this, right? You have the hinge, the squat, the press, the pull, and rotational movements, maybe some carrying. And that's human movement. And that's how we're going to train, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's human. That's definitely a human movement. And I've seen it, and I've studied like what we do, our movements that we do in jiu-jitsu. I was like say for instance, if I'm in somebody's guard, one way to open their legs is to stand up. And if your legs aren't strong and you can't do a lunge or you can't do a squat, then you're not good. I see it all the time. I'm like, people, they're trying to stand. I can't stand up. I was like, yeah, Max, because you have really weak legs, you know? So that's where doing squats and lunges is going to help you tremendously with just jiu-jitsu in that way. You don't have to do a kettlebell movement that looks exactly like jiu-jitsu to do that. You can do it that way, but if you just focus on your, like I said, push, pull, hinge, squat, lunge, rotate, boom, you're good. And then you'll build your jiu-jitsu specific muscles by rolling and wrestling jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Because
isn't it just because that's what people always ask me as well on YouTube, is they say, okay, what is the best exercise for sport X, for boxing, for whatever have you?
They always get that.
And then I always say, listen, I think, like you said, I always use the Russian terminology, GPP, general physical preparation, and then SPP, specific physical preparation. So you do one thing, like you build your strong legs, build a stronger back, build a stronger arm, stronger chest. But then, of course, if you're not able to roll, what good is it? It's nothing. And what I most of the time say is, if you're highly gifted and talented and you're always rolling or always throwing hoops or always, you're like Ronaldo on the soccer field, you probably can do Pilates and yoga in your free time. You'll always destroy everybody because you dedicate 99.9% of your time to the craft. And then that rest, maybe you do some proper weights. And that ties into a question. If when it comes to jiu-jitsu, do you really think, aside from just building general strength, right? Yeah, some stronger legs, some stronger chest and back or whatever have you. If you have a guy that's just ultimately talented and rolls all the time, and he doesn't do anything else, just rolling day in and day out, and he's talented, or she, does this person need additional training in the gym with weights or whatever have you? What's your stand? See?
No, see? Because like one of the greatest jiu-jitsu guys of all time, Marcelo Garcia, that's what he did. He just rolled. He goes, I don't do any strength and conditioning. I just roll. Because what people don't realize also is jiu-jitsu, there's nothing you can do. I don't care if you run a marathon, it doesn't mean you can roll 5 minutes on the mat. You're working your body in ways that are not normal, and you're building a functional strength that you just cannot get from anything else. That's just the way it is. I can roll with a 250-pound guy, but he'll feel weak to me because I have jujitsu. I call it jujitsu strength, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
your body. We're lifting human beings. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing more functional for combat than that. And it's a trip. Like people like, I'm 165 pounds, and I roll with one of my students the other day. He's like 220. He's like, man, he's like, you feel fucking strong as shit. I was like, I'm not stronger than you, bro. I was like, but I have jujitsu strength and I know leverage. I know how to make my body feel heavy. I know
Wow.
these positions. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
it builds a different strength, man. And you know who Jocko Willink is?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Jocko, like one of the things he
Yeah.
says, he goes,
The
learning
Navy SEAL.
jujitsu.
Mm.
He's like, yeah, he's like being good at jujitsu is like having a superpower. He's like, you have a strength,
Wow.
you have a strength that like normal people just do not have. I was like,
Wow.
you know, it's an amazing thing. It's an
Wow.
amazing thing that, you know, like somebody small like me, I could just toss around somebody who's 250 pounds. You know what I mean?
And who's that
And it's
guy
just all
who
up to
just
me.
won the championships? I just saw it because I follow Rogan.
Gordon Ryan.
Gordon does yeah, yeah, yeah. He's also I think there was there was a competition, a jiu-jitsu competition, right?
Yes,
Happened?
ADCC. Yeah,
All right. All right.
that was
So you
that
have
was
the
that was that was probably the biggest jujitsu event of all time, right there.
wow. So you have the
Yeah,
best of the best come together
the
and
best, the
okay.
best of the best, the best of the best. And right now,
And the
Gordon
Gracies
is the man.
because the only yeah, I saw that. And the only reference point that I have when it comes to jiu-jitsu is Rogan, Willink, and the Gracies.
Hmm.
So were the Gracies present?
There was Gracie's there, um, but there weren't any in that competition. We're past the point where, like the Gracies, you know, all the majority of our jujitsu lineage should be able to be traced back to a Gracie.
Oh wow.
Okay, so no matter what, like if you train with somebody over there, his lineage is going to trace back to a Gracie.
Mm.
They're the reason we do what we do. They revolutionized martial arts forever. They helped us answer that question, which martial art is the best that's exists
Yeah.
forever. Oh,
Yeah.
so when
Yeah.
they came out, they're like, back then it was jujitsu. Well, jujitsu is the best. You can't really argue. And then it
Mhm.
evolved into MMA, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So back in the day, like the Gracies were the source, you know, and people would
Mhm.
travel to Brazil, and then little by little, the Gracies started coming to the United States and everything. But now, all the best, there's great jiu-jitsu people everywhere.
Wow.
Now there's a huge shift where all those Brazilians that were really good back in the day, they're like, hey, we can make, you know, have a better life probably here teaching in America. So now all the best gyms are in America. So it's evolved. So now, you know, there's still some Gracies that compete here and there, but they're not as dominant in the industry as they were back in the day. You know what I
Wow.
mean?
It evolved,
Because
huh? It
because
evolved.
yeah, because now millions and millions of more people are doing it.
And that's why and see that's why the craft becomes better. And that's why we
Yeah,
have to stay open-minded and let a lot of people come in and use that tool. Give them it's the same thing with the kettlebell. You
yeah, for sure.
give them the tool, give them the instruction, and then watch what happens, right? Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, man.
So going back
Gordon,
to your
Gordon,
story, Gordon. So what? So because that's the first time I saw this guy. So he beat everybody, right?
easily,
Easily.
easily. It's pretty scary.
What's up
This
with this
guy,
dude?
this guy's just on another level. You know, I mean, like every now and then, you know, like I said, since there's a bigger pool of people to pull from for as far as jujitsu, so many more people. Like now we're getting these people who are just some people who are just extremely gifted
Uh huh.
athletes. He's kind of like the Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan of
Wow.
jujitsu. Like you know, those guys, you look at those guys and you're just like, how can anybody be that fucking good, you know?
Wow.
And that's how Gordon is right now. And a lot of it has to do with his professor, who's John Donahue. He's kind of looked at as he's a very highly touted. he's a very smart guy. He really knows how to break everything down mechanically, and he has a very systematic approach. And there's a lot of really great jiu-jitsu coaches, but he was GSP's jiu-jitsu coach. GSP, I love GSP.
Yeah.
And, he's a Renzo Gracie black belt, and he's really come out within the last like 4 or 5 years that Gordon's been competing, because Gordon's been so dominant, so now like John Donnie here is real famous, and he's highly touted as one of the best jiu-jitsu instructors around.
Wow.
So like and now a lot of people are flocking to his camp to learn, because of that. So that is, and I think, like I said, I think Gordon is he's just a gifted guy, man. Like some people.
You have the Tyson Custamato combination, right?
It's just like, some people are so talented. It doesn't matter like who they train with, they'd still be a champion. You know what I mean?
And that's what people have to realize. That's what people need to see. It's some people are just, it's hard to fathom. They're so incredibly gifted. Just like with the exercise, man, they can do whatever they want. They always beat everybody because they're so good at what they do. Right? Yeah.
Exactly. Like sometimes, man, it just boils down to that person that walks through your door, man. You know what I mean? Like when I was teaching MMA fighters, I had a lot of amateur fighters, but I didn't have anybody that wanted to turn pro. Meanwhile, in another city, Pasadena, my boy Savant had a bunch of people that turned pro. And it's just like, who walks through your door,
that's what it is.
Yeah, so that's part of it too. And he just happened to train with a brilliant jiu-jitsu professor as well. So that's where Gordon is when it comes to that. He's just a super talent, and he's pretty big, man.
Yeah, he's huge.
He's huge, man. And he's good for the sport because he talks a lot of smack. But he's a cool guy. People just do that because we always need a heel. You know what a heel is? A heel is the person that always plays the bad guy. I always have to be a bad guy. Like Conor McGregor, he's always playing.
Yeah.
Always talking shit. So
but everybody knows the dude. It's what it is, right? I think that's a little bit what I've learned along the way. Entertainment, and you have to be confident, right? You have entertaining and confident in what you say and how you act.
For sure. And Gordon's only 27 years old.
Whoa.
That's what's scary, is just like, this guy's 27. He can literally compete for another 20 years if he wanted to. That's how good he is. But yeah, so that was a really huge event. It was an amazing event. It was a great weekend of jiu-jitsu, man. And that was the biggest production the ADCC has ever put on and stuff like that. And they sold out like a little arena in Vegas and everything. Wow. A bunch of people went. Yeah. So yeah, Gordon, man, he's the man. I mean, and I don't know anybody who can beat that guy right now. He beat Andre Galvao, who's just a freaking monster. And Andre Galvao has tons of world champions at his gym, and Gordon just made it look easy. So it's pretty amazing. And there's levels to this, man. There's levels to this.
Yeah. Just like with everything, right? Fascinating. But to get back to your story, Joy, we were at the situation where you were the guy with On It and everything. So how did it happen from that point?
That was pretty much it, man. Like when that happened, I was like, oh well, I guess I have to do my own little DVD myself and stuff like that. Yeah. And I came out with Kettle-Jitsu Revolution, and then after that, the whole DVD thing just kind of faded away. It became a dying technology. Nobody was really doing DVDs anymore. Yeah. So I just do digital stuff now, and I just focus on teaching over here at Legacy. I've been teaching here for over 8 years now, and just doing my group classes and doing what I do now, man, and just watching this whole evolution of kettlebell training now.
Yeah.
And adapting. But yeah, man, like you're smart enough to see that, like, the basics, it doesn't get those hits, it doesn't get those hits, man. but I can't play that. No. I can't play that whole internet game. And I did it and I did it, and I wasn't feeling like I was being true to myself if I was out there just putting workouts that I don't do myself. Yeah. Like, if you're not doing those workouts, people want to know how you get fit. This is
Yeah.
how I do it. These are the workouts that I do.
Yeah.
I was like, how many of these kettlebell instructors do you see? I see actually working out with their students
And that's what counts. And I think it, especially if you call yourself coach or trainer. I mean, there's a lot of people who just do it. I do it, and I have a following, and that's how I move, which is awesome. But because when I listen to you, I just hear and see the experience. It's that's just experience talking from working.
Let me ask you a question. How often do you think Pavel actually works out with kettlebells?
I mean, that's when I think he got hurt along the way or whatever, but realizing, that's one of the things, realizing that you see him rarely do anything.
And that's what I noticed in the beginning. I was like,
that's
everybody would be like, oh, Pavel, he's amazing. I was like, okay, what is he amazing at?
And I think
I was like, I can't find any videos of him working out. I can see videos of him demonstrating a couple moves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I never see him working out with kettlebells. I never see him doing anything. I would see Steve working out.
Yeah.
And Maxwell.
And Maxwell both.
See all these guys actually working out.
Yeah.
I was like, these guys are passionate about business.
Yeah.
And I always just thought that Pavel was a businessman. And what happened was when he split with RKC, I remember all the RKC ads and because he was pulling out ads in like martial art magazines and stuff like that. And it was like, the kettlebell, it is the AK-47 for Russian Spetsnaz, it's the ultimate tool, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And then all of a sudden he's doing barbell. Like CrossFit got big, and then they were like, oh, we got to start doing, body weight's big too. Okay, let's do it. Then he created Strong First and started doing body weight, and barbell and stuff like that, right? So, okay, well, I guess that's the Russian kettlebell wasn't the special secret weapon that he said it was, really.
Yeah.
So then to confirm this was, for me, was the Joe Rogan podcast. Which when did you see that when he was on that podcast?
Yeah. I saw it.
Incredibly awkward interview. Did you get that vibe? I got that vibe right away. Joe would ask him questions, and he just, "How old are you?" Oh,
about his age. I knew that comes up. We don't share that.
And
come on, Joe. Come on.
For me, no, man. Like, come on, dude. Come on,
dude.
By the way,
how old are you?
I'm 51 years old.
Yeah.
So you know, okay.
Okay,
I have
awesome,
no problem with
that. Awesome.
Yeah. It's a secret. I don't want anybody to know how old I am. You know. So I thought that was funny. And then Joe was like, okay, well, what do you do to work out? I do swings and dips. And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, I'm glad he just spit out what I've been saying all this whole time. And I give him respect because I really feel that he's one of the reasons that started the kettlebell boom.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just him. It was whoever helped market.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it was the Duquesne and them.
John Duquesne. So I had a convo with him, Joey. I had a conversation with John Duquesne.
Is he the one who worked with Pavel back in the day?
Yes. He came from that Qigong vibe. The first time he saw Pavel was when Pavel was the stretching master from Russia. And I even saw an advert. Man, Frank Shamrock, the guy, one of the UFC guys. I saw him posting an image because I follow him on Facebook. So he posts an image. He says, "Hey, look at this. Me back in the day on one of those old adverts." So you see his face, right? And then down below you see Pavel, and that's what it says: Russian Stretch Master, right? So it was, for me, I realized when I had this convo with John, he said, I mean, what Pavel had was he had the knowledge of being a coach, and he was incredibly charismatic, and he had this shtick. So he created this marketing idea. And that's the idea. And that's what people be like, yeah, the Spetsnaz train with it. Bro, man, it's a marketing gig. Of course you have some special units having kettlebells in their gym. Man, you can probably tell them from everybody, right? That's normal.
You're like, that's not when people say, "Oh, I train special forces," man, I'm like, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
Like, just because you train a couple guys one time, it's not like the Spetsnaz hired you to come in and train them every day or anything. You probably showed a couple. I train special forces, SEALs, SWAT team, and shit all the time, man. You know, they train at the gym, train jiu-jitsu, train kettlebells, whatever. Like that's just a shtick that they're trying to create. They created this whole mythological character.
Yeah, this persona, and it worked. It worked
like,
great,
guy,
right?
He's amazing. He's amazing. All this guy's incredible. I'm like, well, what is he amazing at? I don't see him doing anything. So then when he said that on Joe Rogan, I just laughed and I was like, see, I just been saying this whole time. He's not. How can anybody that is passionate about fitness feel satisfied after doing a workout with only dips and swings? And then he said, because it has the most carryover. I'm like, carryover to what? You don't do anything. You're not an athlete. You're not an athlete. You don't teach classes. What is it carrying over to? I mean, you're smart enough to know that you are not going to get enough out of just doing dips and swings, brother.
No, man.
There's just no way.
No. I mean, no. It's and that's when people sometimes ask, is they say, "Hey, I've heard the swing is the greatest exercise." I think the swing is awesome, but there's one thing that's lacking. What? Well, overhead movement. You're not pressing. You're not over. What's the upper body doing, right?
Yeah. Oh, a lot of overhead pressing.
That's important, right?
Pressing from the floor.
Yeah, and from the floor. But let me just push back a little bit, Joey, because I think I've read some of Pavel's books. I've followed some of his teachings, and what I see is that there is value that he and credit to him, value that he was able to gather through him and other people. So because he had this marvelous combination back in the day of, you had John Duquesne, the marketing power, and John said this about Pavel. He said, well, Pavel is a brand guy. He knows how to create, how to brand himself. And John was the direct marketing guy. So then you have a Dan John coming in, a strength coach with a vast experience teaching people coming in. Then you have a Steve Maxwell from the martial arts world coming in, bringing the Turkish get-up in the curriculum. Then you have Steve Cotter becoming a mastermind as well. Then you have a Sean Mosen from Canada hailing in, getting that stuff. And then, of course, you have this great combination of people. And what Pavel does, what I think he does well, is he created value, wisdom, and knowledge from other people and from him as well, which I think has carryover into just plain reality. When it comes to teaching certain exercises, when it comes to, for example, I love simple and sinister. I love the idea of explosiveness. I think high tension techniques, like he got this from martial arts, right? That's what John shared with me. High tension techniques make sense because you probably realize this as well. Some people are just so loose they can't even contract the muscle. They have. It takes them an hour to turn from the non-active to the active state, right? So they need to develop some power. So this is most definitely where I see value. But, and here's the big but, and that's why I didn't run with Strong First and didn't run with RKC. I think they created, or maybe he created this himself, a persona who seems to be infallible, who's almost a god. For example, his cardio work. His cardio, I think, is the Pavel quick and dead, right? The quick and dead. I've had conversations with Valery Fedorenko, who's a master of sport, a legend in the kettlebell sport world, with Arseny Zhernakov, another honored master of sport. So I asked them the question. I said, listen, this idea from Pavel when it comes to building endurance. So I shared what Pavel is saying. And I love what Valery said. He said, well, you know, what is the first thing you have to do when you run a marathon? I said, well, you tell me. Building up the volume. You go run.
Yeah.
That's how you build endurance. But if you tell me that you run 100 meters full speed and then you stop, and then you run 100 meters again and you stop, you're not going to be able to run a marathon, right?
Yeah, you're training for something else.
Yeah, you're training for something else. So that's and like you mentioned in the Joe Rogan podcast, carryover. Yeah, for what? I mean, carryover for what?
Yeah,
I think the dips are a great exercise, but some people have messed up shoulders and they're not able to be able to carry their own body weight, right? So
exactly.
yeah.
But
I see where you're coming from, Joey. Most definitely.
Yeah. So to me, like you were saying, that to me, it was more like I I got more of like a culty vibe,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
from that and stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not really like into like hero worship and stuff like that. And when
Oh,
people
me
start
neither.
putting people like on a pedestal like that, and they make them a god, I'm like, that's a little too intense for me. Because I mean, I love my martial arts master, my jiu-jitsu master, Haja Machado, but I don't like look at him as a god or anything like that. I don't want
Mhm,
anybody to think of me like that either, man. I'm just a
mhm,
normal
mhm,
person, and
mhm.
just with ideas,
Yeah.
and that loves to work out. I love training jiu-jitsu. I love teaching,
Mhm.
and yeah. So I mean, to each their own. Everybody's different. Some people, they like that type of stuff, but when it starts getting a little culty and
Yeah.
stuff like that, I wasn't. And I mean, like I said, with that the interview with Joe Rogan, it was kind of funny. It was hard to watch for me. I was just like, because it didn't really look like Joe was really, connecting with them good, because he's real secretive about all his stuff and this
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that, and like, I don't know. He's a trippy guy, man. He is charismatic. He has his own style, man.
And
He
I
say
think one
some
of the
funny
reasons
things.
Joey, why Pavel was so secretive is, and that's just my guess, but John Duquesne said, in real life, Pavel was a gentleman, a sweet in nature, great to have a conversation with. But I think, and that's what sometimes I think, where some Instagram people have to be careful, because if you create a persona or a shtick or a certain set of crazy kettlebell exercises, whatever have you, and people start following you for this, you better keep this up for your whole life.
Yeah.
You
That's probably what. Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, I
so
guess.
so if you're natural, I mean, if you have like we are having a conversation, I don't,
You got to keep acting forever.
yeah, you gotta have that
You got
persona,
you got to
yeah.
you got to stay in
In
character.
character, you can't lose
You got to
it.
stay in character.
Because people are like, is that Pavel? Who's that dude?
Yeah.
So maybe that's just my guess. And you mentioned culty. I think that's what turned me off as well. Two things turned me off. First of all, the cultish vibe. What he says counts. When at the same time, listen, man. I developed this notion. I say, take every expert's opinion as guide and not as a gospel, right?
Yeah, for sure,
So
definitely.
they say something. If this person is intelligent, I listen. But this doesn't mean just because I listen and that this person is
Yeah,
intelligent that I automatically default to that's the way to do it. No, I
yeah,
have my
and that
right.
and that was the mentality of those organizations. Is like whatever Pavel said, that's was set in stone,
Yeah,
and you couldn't do anything else.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
and I think, but to their credit now, those guys have opened up now too.
yeah,
Those
yeah.
guys are more. They understand. They see. They were telling me back in the day, hey, that kettlebell flow shit is bullshit. Pavel doesn't like it, blah 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 blah. But now, like, look what happened.
Yeah.
It's evolved,
It's
and it's
evolving.
almost like the norm now. And I think they have become more accepting of it. But I think back then, they were very those type. And I'm not saying everyone, but
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm,
seemed to be. I wasn't getting any hecklers from Steve Maxwell's organization. I
mm-hmm,
wasn't getting any hecklers from
mm-hmm.
Steve Cotter's organization.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was mostly from the really traditional RKC and Strong First guys.
And you know
You
what's
know?
crazy? He said we wanted to become the authority.
Yeah,
And
and they did, and they did.
and
They
they
really
did.
did.
And one thing that I have to give even Pavel credit for, Pavel invited even Valery Fedorenko from Russia to the States to give seminars, but
That's cool.
John said, "Nah, man, we gotta stick to our own idea because we're able to market this way better if we
Sure,
follow one type of idea." And I said, "Hey, from a marketing perspective, this makes sense." And then I asked him,
for sure.
I said, another question, John. What do you think created this divide in the forums?
Mhm.
He said, well, it originated from the culture. And if something originates from the culture where you are the person in charge, then you are the one that's sending it down to your people. It's
Mhm.
we are the good ones, these are the bad ones, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, from a business perspective, I guess you don't want anybody doing anything else but your stuff, But
Yeah.
yeah, you can't really like box people in like that, because then in the long run they're gonna realize what happened, and they're gonna want to get outside of that box, man. Like when you keep something from somebody, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's crazy, man. You've talked to a lot of people. That's cool, John DeCane.
Yeah, it was a great
Cool.
conversation.
And you have to give credit to him and Pavel, because they're smart enough to know that there was a market for kettlebell, because nobody knew what to do with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're smart to know, like, hey, this kettlebell shit's cool, but nobody in America knows anything about it.
Yeah.
And they're smart enough, and they market it, and they definitely get credit for starting the whole kettlebell movement, bringing kettlebell awareness to the United States and all over the world, for sure.
And that's something that.
But that's not my bag, baby.
Yeah. I think everybody agrees on this, but at the end of the day, you have to realize that it's if we stay close-minded, it's maybe just a question of time until somebody arrives who's more open-minded and then really takes off.
Yeah. Like it's really, really boils down to is every individual is going to have their own journey. Yeah. You have to, I'm never going to say like Kettle-Jitsu is the best way to train kettlebells. I would love everybody in the world to do it, but this is not a smart way to think about it. You have to decide, you have to try different modalities, kettlebells, barbell, CrossFit, whatever, and see what suits you and suits your needs. And if you're getting the results from that, and you enjoy it and you're going to stick with it, then by all means stick with it. Like, you have to keep an open mind, and you have to be open to learning different things, and the same thing with diet. There's this big battle between diets and stuff like that.
It's the same.
Carnivore. Oh,
yeah.
That's the way.
Nah, vegan. Let's go vegan.
And then you got this other guy. No, you have to eat raw testicles.
You have to eat raw liver, my man. The liver king, dude. But hey,
man,
it's crazy.
They're getting the clicks, man.
Because they do exactly what Pavel did.
Exactly.
They create this huge vibe around themselves where they are the gods. I mean, for example, the Liver King dude. I mean, hey, and on his Instagram, which I believe that's what his folks do, right? He has a plan. This guy has a plan, and then he responds and talks about himself in the third person. He says, yes, you should do it, but the Liver King does it differently, and that's him saying it, right? And that's the
exactly
and that's the persona. Yeah, he creates the character, and I think you get a lot of exposure. If you're lucky, you maybe hit it big time. But here's where
he hit it big time.
Yeah, most definitely. He hit it big time. But then you always have to, I mean, for example, imagine that's you, and you always have to walk around with shorts and your shirt off to every podcast. Everywhere you go.
Running somewhere. He's like, and then he has a bunch of organs waiting at the end.
Imagine this. Brother does a world tour, comes to Siberia or Switzerland, he's freezing his ass off, and he has to take his shirt off, but he can't. He has to stay in character. So you always have to be in character.
The same thing with like Wim Hof. I mean, how many ice baths has that guy had to do? He's got to do like ice baths every day for the rest of his life now.
I'm the Ice King. So if you ever see this dude drinking a warm tea, you're like, you're a fraud.
I can't wait to see your interview with Wim Hof. He's going to be like this.
Where you at right now? Well, I'm in the mountain right now. Oh man, it's crazy. And so I think that's what people create, is always this persona. Then you always have to follow it. And once you break character, people are confused, because I think people sometimes they can make the distinction between this persona and between the people that's behind it. And so that's one of the reasons why I never want to create something which deep inside I feel like, nah, I'm not really that guy. And you know what's funny? I felt the same. You said this. You said about the internet thing that you tried it. With my YouTube channel, I realized like last year that reactions, if I start reacting to workouts, this gets a lot of clicks and views. But after a couple of months and after doing a lot of these reactions, I realized like, man, I don't know, man. I'm a coach. That's not really, that doesn't give me a lot of joy. So I dialed it down, but I still do them. But on a very, very far and few in between, way less than I did before. And now I'm way more happy with it. I'm like, hey, I can do a little bit of the internet, get those click style, but I'm always also a coach where I want people to respect me for what I do with the kettlebell.
Yeah, man.
All right.
If you're always worried about like what workout you're gonna do on Instagram, you're gonna freaking go nuts, man. I was like, how many workouts do you possibly have? You know, like you can't just, and then you're gonna be like, oh, I gotta come up with something different, because you know, at our gym we have some of the, I call everybody kids because I'm like twice their age, that do the whole influencer thing, you know, and every day they're in there, they're doing the latest skit that people are doing, the latest trend, you know, so they have to do a video that has some other voice, and so essentially what they've done is they have to become actors. They're like actors now. They have to, hey, you want to do this video with me? We're going to do this whole scene. We're going to blah, blah, blah. And they have to get the film. Then they have their phones with the lights and everything now. And then they go back and they edit it. And I'm like, I don't want to have to every day be going, okay, I got to come plan a workout. I gotta, blah, blah, blah. You know, I was like, instead of doing that, I just post the workouts that I'm doing in the class with my students. And I was like, that's what so I set up a camera. I film like that one flow that we do, or some body weight movements or whatever. And that's it. Instead of me having to create something, I have to create workout for my students, and we follow a different workout each week. So I just filmed the workout. I was like, hey, this is our workout of the week. And that's how we do it. I don't even get any further than that, man, because I'll freaking lose my mind, dude. I have so many other things doing.
And what I love, that's one of the exercises that I took from you is, which I really love, is the clean and the rotational press. I love this idea, man. And
that was me trying to work on the pivoting that you do when you throw punches. When you throw punches, you have to pivot. Pivot. Yeah, because like a lot of people don't realize that. They're like, why am I doing that? I'm like, I'm always trying to make things closer to fighting. Like, so that's why, like back in the day, man, like I said, nobody was doing anything really different. Like, so on my first DVD, I actually started doing a lot of things that people are just barely figuring out now. It's like how to swing from what people call a split stance. I call it a fighting stance. How to swing from there, the proper mechanics from there, throwing punches from there and stuff like that. So that's my mind right there. I'm always like, how can I make this closer to fighting and stuff like that? So yeah, the rotational punches are great, man. It hits different, man, you know?
Yeah, and the idea now that I hear it, I just saw it and I was like, oh, I like the idea of rotating your body under a press while it is still safe. So you're still in a very safe position, even with heavier weights, which I like. And now that you're saying, well, the idea is pivoting from the hip, because that's what we do in fighting, it makes even more sense now, right?
Yeah, that's how you generate the power.
I love it, and that's what I think. If somebody does an exercise, which I look at something and I try to keep an open mind, but sometimes I'm like, I dismiss this. If you, I love what you said in the beginning before we started recording, man. If you love doing this and you have results, do it. I would never do it. That's just what it is, right?
Yeah,
but
definitely.
You are now able to explain something, and when I see an exercise which makes me raise my eyebrow, and then I have the guy or the gal come up to me and say, listen, looks a little strange, right? But that's the reason why we do it. And then it immediately makes sense. Then I'm like, oh, you got it, man. But if we do something and we can't really explain why, other than getting some views, this is where, things start to take a different turn, right?
Yeah, it's just different, man. It's just, you know, social media has changed everything. Some for the better and some for the worse, you know.
Oh, most definitely.
But it's just I think it's just a trend. All the fancy stuff, it's going to have to balance out at some point. but maybe not. Who knows, man? Who
But
knows?
as a last question, Joey, what was the
Sure.
if we compare this to jiu-jitsu,
Uh,
did you guys experience in the jiu-jitsu world a trend that everybody was doing and then it went away and went back to
yep.
the fundamentals?
Oh, absolutely.
Ah.
It always goes back to the fundamental, and people don't realize that too. That 100% jujitsu has trends every year. There might be a particular guard that somebody's playing because people see that because, say, for instance, we have a type of guard. It's called De La Hiva guard. It's named after a very famous jiu-jitsu guy. He was a small guy. His name was Ricardo De La Hiva. And he was training with big guys all the time. And he was like, man, and he developed this type of guard where he can like keep these guys at bay and sweep them and stuff. It's called De La Hiva guard. So it's named after him. You know what I mean? So like everybody now wants to invent a technique that they're going to get credit for. You know what I mean?
That's what it is, man.
So
that's
people
what
are
everybody wants.
coming up with all these crazy different guards, and then you had to say like one trend, for instance, was this guy Keenan Cornelius. He's like this American black belt. He was like a jiu-jitsu phenom, and he came up with something called lapel guard. I mean, there's people playing with it, but he really got it, and he pulled like a Pavel and really focused on that area. And really developed it and really just started inventing all these techniques with it. And they came out with the lapel guards encyclopedia, you know? And it's just like, you get the lapel, you wrap it around your leg, and then you switch hand, and then you wrap it again, you wrap it around it, and then you wrap it around your head, and then you wrap it around his head. And it was just crazy. I was like, man, this stuff is bullshit. But it was a trend for a while. Everybody was buying his stuff and trying the lapel guard and stuff like that. And then little by little, people started realizing that it wasn't very practical, and there was only a select few people able to pull it off. And then what happened? If you look at ADCC, you didn't see any fancy shit, man.
I wanted to ask this question. What was guard?
It was a lot of different wrestling. Wrestling has had a huge influence in no-gi jiu-jitsu and gi jiu-jitsu, but particularly no-gi jiu-jitsu. And it was just basic stuff, man. Basic guard passes, foot locks, arm bars, chokes, you know. It was just your real basic stuff, man, you know. So so 100% jiu-jitsu does have trends, and but when you see the main guys winning the competitions, they're not doing anything fancy.
So Gordon played the fundamentals right, I'm assuming.
If you look at his game, you're not going to see anything fancy. You're going to see solid fundamentals. And
fascinating.
What makes him, he knows what to do in every situation. Boom, boom, boom. He has his go. He knows what to do, and that's what jiu-jitsu is about. You have to know what to do in every given situation, and his reactions, and he really understands body mechanics and stuff like that. Yeah, so he wasn't doing anything fancy, man. It was just good old fashioned fundamental jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing with people wanting to get in shape, wanting to discover the kettlebell, get good with the fundamentals, and you'll always have a blast. I think I've perfected my jerk now with double kettlebells to a place where I'm now getting comfortable, because I think, do you think it requires some body awareness, some kinesthetic sense that you are doing this particular exercise and your body is telling you, listen, it still doesn't feel right. Yes, you're getting better at it, but your body is giving you that feedback that no. And people look at you, it's like, it looks great. And you're like, no, it still needs work. And now my jerk is finally at a point where my body now agrees that, hey, I think we've come to a good place now.
Yeah. And repetition
yes,
is the mother of learning.
Putting in the reps, and I still almost every day I do jerks because I'm so in love with that I can't explain it, but I just love it.
You don't have to explain it because everybody is different, brother. I don't do jerks at all, but you know, I do presses, I do squats. I like, you know, for instance, one thing I really enjoy doing, I enjoy doing deck squats.
From the bottom, from the ground up,
rolling
right?
up the feet, because I mean that's like jiu-jitsu. We're always on the back and back on our feet, back on our feet, back on our feet. Plus, it makes a squat so much more dynamic.
Yeah,
and you're gonna work more muscles and everything. And I don't see a lot of people doing it, but I fucking love. I think deck squats are fantastic, you know, and it makes the exercise more anaerobic as well, which is something that jiu-jitsu is anaerobic. And guess what? If you add a press at the top of that deck squat, what do you have? You have a deck thruster.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
From the bottom up, boom.
Thrusters are fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic
something
exercise.
as simple as doing a squat and a press together.
Brilliant. It's
amazing
brilliant
movement, full body movement, super explosive. But hey, if I just sit there and do a thruster on Instagram, I don't think a lot of people are gonna like my shit, right?
Come up with that. Where's the hardcore stuff? Show us the hardcore stuff.
Hey, can you at least do some juggling in that or something?
Can we balance it on the head, coach? Can we do this? So final question, because that really I already said final question, but I have to ask you one more thing, Joey. Bro. And that is how much of your exercises that have been strongly influenced by the way you do jiu-jitsu, for example, the deck squat, right? Influenced by jiu-jitsu, the split stance or the staggered swing or whatever you want to call it in the fighting stance, all the hooks and whatever. How much of this is are you incorporating into your general classes where you have general people showing up? Do you mix them in all the time, or do you still say, no, you know, the hook stuff or even the deck squat, it's just more a little bit of the advanced, or how do you cope with that?
I mix them in here and there. I mean, like I said, I've really boiled it down to more fundamental stuff. So something that I think is like real jiu-jitsu specific, we do deck squats pretty often. We do the rocking chair to a press, which is rocking chair is a jiu-jitsu exercise on the ground where you roll up and tuck your shin in. The hip escape is not something that I do a lot in classes because women, for one reason is I have different women and they don't do jiu-jitsu. And that's kind of a real unusual movement, doing hip escapes. And also women like to train with tank tops. And when they're doing hip escapes on a tatami, they're scraping up their shoulders and stuff like that. And that's another reason. And another reason I like snatches, but they're very technical. Yeah. And if you don't do them all the time, you know, I don't want to do that. And like when a girl does a snatch and it smacks their little supple wrists, they're like, "Oh, I'm off the deal.
I'm not doing this anymore."
So I don't focus on stuff like that. Another one that we do regularly is the get up. I don't really like calling it the Turkish get up because I get a lot of shit from my Armenian students for it. I don't know if you're familiar with the whole Armenia-Turkey thing, you know?
Yeah, I'm also
familiar with that.
It's around my area. Yeah,
man. You know, it's going on right now, man. And my poor Armenian friends, I feel so bad for them, man. They're watching their people get slaughtered. But
you know how you can call it, Joey? You know how you can call it? Call it the Balkan get up.
The what get up?
The Balkan get up, right? There's the area where my ancestors and my dad is from, right? Is you have Europe, right? The heart of Europe is Switzerland. Then you have Germany on the top, Italy down, and then when you go on the right side, Europe down to the east, this is where you have Austria, Slovenia, Croatia, Yugoslavia, right, and then down to Turkey. So a huge part of this coast is called Balkan. Okay, so and I think because I had a great conversation with Geronimo Milo, he's from Argentina. He's like the father of Argentinian kettlebell training. I love this guy, and had a great conversation with him. And he really went deep into kettlebell history. And then we had a back and forth, a lot of conversations. So I think I know where the idea of the Turkish comes from, because my people, and I see this, that's funny, from my relatives and from my people as well, is we sit, or we first of all, we like sitting down on the floor. A lot of my people, we don't sit on couches, we sit on the floor. And then we have a certain way of sitting, and I see many of the old guys do it, a certain way of sitting that looks like a starting position of the Turkish get-up. So my assumption is it comes from that area, because it was just called getting up from the ground with weight overhead.
Sure.
But because we start from that position, maybe somebody from the OGs, from those old school strongmen said, that's how the Turkish get up, right?
Yeah.
So that's maybe where it comes from. So we call it Balkan get up.
Yeah.
I think they understand it.
You know what's funny is the first time my original instructor taught me the Turkish get up, I was like, this is like the technical lift, which is an exercise in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu that we use to get back to our feet.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it just blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, dude, that's the technical lift.
Yeah.
And a lot of people never really saw the correlation. But I don't do my Turkish get up like everybody else does a Turkish get up. You know, like I've adapted it to fit jiu-jitsu again, because we do this movement off the ground to push people away from us all the time in jiu-jitsu. So I do a little bit different, and I incorporate the press at the bottom of the movement when you're on your back. Everybody keeps it stiff, and that's cool.
I saw that. Yeah.
I was like, why not throw a punch?
I love this.
And I was like, why not? I was like, why do we eliminate the punch? Because there's really not too much pressing in the Turkish get-up when you think about it.
Yeah.
And if you add the pressing, then you're doing everything. You're pushing, pulling, squatting, everything all in one movement. And if I could do one exercise only, it would be the Turkish get-up, because it's just awesome. I love it. And another thing is we do for time. I don't do for max reps. Me too. I don't do max reps or anything.
Time is awesome.
Try doing an alternating Turkish get-up with a moderate weight for 3 minutes straight. And tell me if that's
hardcore. Yeah, that's hardcore. Most definitely. We do that as well. I love it. I see so many similarities, man. I see so many similarities.
I thought this podcast was only supposed to be an hour. I think it's been like 2 hours now.
Yeah, man. Because we have a great combo, man. But you know what? Man. You know what's funny is I see these similarities that we share, because we come from this background of teaching and working with people.
And you're a teacher, so you understand where I'm coming from.
And what is so fascinating, which that really blew my mind, is when you mention this, you go down in the get up and then you do this rocking move and then you punch back up. Sometimes, and I'm not joking, I saw this. I saw you do this for the first time. I saw you go down and I was like, wow, his Turkish or his get up looks way more dynamic. He's way more, he doesn't stop. It's not I mean, you can do it with heavy weights and stiff and all that, which is awesome, great, a lot of tension, but you can also build it into this fluidity, right?
Exactly.
So I saw you do this for the first time, and sometimes I do it as well. And then I think about you. I'm like, rocking back and then punching back up and building it into a fluid way of moving, right?
Yeah, and this goes back to me always thinking about martial arts, man. You know?
Love it, man.
Cool, brother.
Joey.
Right on, man. What a great conversation. I can't remember the last time I spoke to somebody for 2 hours straight.
I feel honored, man.
That's good, awesome. Man. Yeah, that was awesome, man. Awesome, man. That was a great podcast. And
most definitely.
You know what, man? You speak really well, and I think you need to continue with this podcast thing, man, because I think you're a good interviewer, brother. And,
thank you, man.
You actually work out and you train people regularly, so you can relate. And you can always give your perspective, man. Good stuff, brother. Thank you for having me.
If you're looking for kettlebell courses that can help you lose weight, build muscle, and improve your kettlebell technique, then check out the Leberstock Academy. Let us help you discover a new perspective on kettlebell training, making it simple and easy for you to understand. Join the waiting list of your desired course now and secure your spot when it's open for enrollment. Link is in the description.